Whether it's building a business from scratch with your own two hands and wanting to maximize the financial impact of those sacrifices, or growing a great nest egg by being a dedicated and reliable worker for years, or choosing to live a life well within your means in order to accomplish a lifelong dream of retirement, the last thing you want is to go with the wrong financial advice after you've worked so hard to accumulate your assets. You've also probably spent most of your life putting others' needs ahead of your own, and now it's your turn. We can help. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is a locally owned, independent, fee-based financial planning, investment management, and tax planning practice. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. We serve all of Baldwin County and the Gulf Coast. We also have an easy-to-understand fee-for-service model with no sales quotas, no proprietary products. Our ultimate responsibility is to our clients' goals and dreams. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or find us online at gulfcoastfa.com. That's Gulf, like the Gulf of Mexico, Coast, FA as in financialadvisor.com.
Whether you're dreaming of a retirement with sand between your toes and a cold one in your hand, hitting the road to chase the winds of adventure, or spending time with your grandchildren, this show is intended to help you get there. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement with your host, Josh Knoll. You've worked too hard throughout your career to spend your retirement worrying. So sit back, kick up your feet, because we've got lots of financial tips and tricks to share to help you get exactly where you want to be. Here's Josh.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in. Welcome to Coasting in Retirement. Wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening, thank you for joining us. We have another great show for you today. We have another great guest host, and I think we have a great topic or series of topics that you mature business owners out there listening will want to pay close attention to. Now, regular co-host Michelle is playing hooky this week, so in her chair, let me introduce Mr. Will Steih, financial advisor extraordinaire. Will, how you doing?
Josh, I'm doing quite well. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. I appreciate the invite. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, glad to have you. Well, listeners, Will and I are here today to discuss financial topics relevant to those of you in or near retirement, living your best life along our part of the Gulf Coast. Here's what we got in store for you today. First segment, deep dive on our topic of the day. Second segment, it's about 20 minutes past the hour. That'll be the news of the week. Regular listeners know that's Michelle with the news of the week, but she's not here. And then roughly 40 minutes past the hour, stick around for our third segment. We call it Josh's Crystal Ball and Big Mouth. But of course, we got Will here, so we're going to see what Will's big mouth has to say about anything and see if he's made any predictions he'd like to take back. So buckle up. We got a lot to get to. Now, a quick background on me for those of you new to the show. Again, my name is Josh Knoll. I'm a fee-based financial advisor. I hold my FINRA Series 65 securities license, and I'm the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. We're an independent investment management and financial planning firm. We have offices in Fairhope, Orange Beach, and Mobile. You got to visit the Mobile office sometime, Will. You can find more information on me and Gulf Coast Financial Advisors by visiting our website, gulfcoastfa.com, or feel free to give us a call anytime, 251-327-2124. Now, if you just missed that contact info, do not worry. We repeat it several times throughout the show. Also, Will, I want to do just a real quick disclaimer, and I think it'll help the listeners understand your role with Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. So Will Steih has the unique credentials of being a securities licensed financial advisor like I am, but he's also a license as a certified public accountant, CPA. How many years now, Will?
Gosh, something like,
when
96.
Okay. Yeah, when I met you years ago, you always said 25, and you kept saying 25.
It's like 28.
It's going on 30, buddy.
Could that be possible?
It is. Will serves as a tax planning consultant to my firm, GCFA, meaning that he's not directly employed by me or for GCFA, nor is he involved in any securities transactions. Will's advisory services are offered through Prime Capital Investment Advisors. That's PCIA. It's a federally registered investment advisor. PCIA does business as Prime Capital Wealth Management, PCWM, and Qualified Plan Advisors, QPA. PCIA, PCWM, and QPA are not affiliated with GCFA, my firm, in any way. All right, so let's get back to the show. That's enough acronyms or whatever you call abbreviations. Will, at this point, you and I go back several years. And anyone that has either followed Gulf Coast Financial Advisors' journey, or for some of you listening, maybe you've even done business with us. If you have, then you will be very familiar with Will and the unique expertise that he brings to our firm, particularly around helping mature business owners keep what Will calls keep more of their hard-earned dollars in their pocket. I asked Will to come on the show today because I wanted to talk about some of the things that we had done to help Gulf Coast area business owners, particularly around tax planning and succession planning. Now, Will and I can talk about a whole lot of topics related to helping business owners. So after some chopping it up over last night, we decided we're going to narrow it down to 3 related topics for this episode. I'm going to list those 3 topics, and then we're going to dive into each individually, okay? So first up on our list is going to be private equity deals for small and medium-sized business owners. Number 2 on our list is going to be deferred sales trust, sometimes goes by its initials DST. And finally, number 3, succession planning and exit strategies for business owners. Let me repeat that real quick. These are our 3 main topics of the day: private equity, deferred sales trusts, and succession planning. Got it? Okay. All right, so Will, let's do this. Let's dive into, there's no particular order here, but let's dive into private equity. You have, I know at least for the last couple of years, you've been getting deeper and deeper in some of these things. So why don't you kick it off? Let's talk about what you know, what you've learned around private equity as it relates to their interest in small and medium-sized businesses.
No, Josh, that's as we were talking about the items to have out here today was private equity, and what's happening is the phenomena, probably certainly the last 5 years, maybe you can go back 10 years, was that there's money looking for opportunity. And what that means is you've got folks that say, hey, I've been in the public equities markets, I've been in the stock market before, and I've got my fill of Apple stock and Facebook's now, all these different pieces that are publicly traded securities. The private equity market represents sort of these hidden gems, and at least that's in some regards the closely held business owner. So there's private equity firms that have raised capital that are going out and about, sometimes referred to as turning over rocks, trying to find that diamond in the rough, which typically would look like a closely held business owner. Maybe it's 100% owned by one individual. Maybe it's a collection of individuals, maybe a 3-person partnership. And they say, hey, there's something unique about this company, whether it's particular service delivery, whether it's product, distribution, however they've distinguished themselves, and there's a value there. And that's where private equity is looking to say, hey, we're wanting to get in on that particular niche market, and we feel like an infusion of capital, which in turn basically they're going to buy the company from that, those who birthed the company, and say, hey guys, here's a chunk of cash to go forward or to exit the business. So it's kind of a tandem thing between, if we use the phrase, being bought out, and then also for exits where business owners are getting to a certain stage of life, like, hey, I want to dial things down. I want to take my exit. So,
all right, very good. And Will, here's my opinion. I think it's pretty fascinating. In years past, if a company wanted to raise significant amount of capital, millions of dollars, they really only had a couple of resources. They could go to banks, they could maybe go to hedge funds, or more often than not, they would list their stocks publicly, right? What we've seen, I don't know the exact number of how much private equity has increased over the last 5 to 10 years, but I would imagine the amount of capital at the disposal of private equity is 10x what it was even 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's probably on the short side, I would say, for sure.
And so companies can go to private equity and they can get the volume of capital that typically, historically, they could only go do by going public. Is that fair?
Very fair.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, all right, pivoting to the individual business owners, especially the folks that are listening to this, they're thinking, okay, well, that sounds great, guys. I don't necessarily need $100 million. Well, what if I've got a company that's worth $10 million, $5 million, $20 million, some in that range? Why would someone like that be interested and open to have a conversation with private equity, given the fact, let me preface this way, given the fact that there is absolutely interest on the private equity side for that size of business? Why would somebody take a listen?
So given that there's this money and there's already knocks on the door. I mean, chances are if there's a business owner here and it's successful and been in business for some period of time, they've gotten the knock on the door. It really becomes a function of timing for that business owner and kind of like at what stage of life they're at. It's like, hey, if you're already entering into your 50s, you're age 50 or older, that's sort of we've seen that sort of a mindset starts to shift between, gosh, maybe the traditional retirement age of 65 doesn't seem as far off at that point in time. There's something about turning 50 that'll do that too. And then this idea of, okay, well, maybe there's something, there's a market threat down the road, or there's just something. A lot of times it's just, I'll say, energy and juice. Like the business owner, the entrepreneur realizes that it took so much to, blood, sweat, and tears to get this thing off the ground. Now that it's hitting a certain maturity stage, we've even seen situations where it's kind of like, hey, I'm looking for the next challenge. Like this kind of like, man, I kind of got this, been there, done that.
I've taken this as far as I can, and I'm looking for the next challenge.
Right. And they see it as a way to produce the capital, right? So, okay, no, why would I sell? Well, I produce capital that'll take me into my next endeavor. So now I'm going to pivot and I'm going to leave this professional services deal, and I've always had my sights set on doing some real estate development. We've seen that before. Right. So it's an opportunity to realize the, really monetizing the blood, sweat, and tears that they've invested in that company. Because again, unlike your Apple stock or your Meta now that we have it, or NVIDIA stock, you can't go, they can't wake up one morning and go, hey, I think I'm going to sell my company. What's it trading? What's the stock? What's the ticker have to say today? It doesn't work that way. So when these opportunities come about, sometimes those PE firms that can be more lucrative offer than maybe what it was just a year ago.
Right. And I will say this, Will, because obviously we want to be crystal clear. You and I are not private equity company, right? But we work hand in hand. We've worked with the private equity firms, working with our business owner clients. And our job is to really kind of be, how would you describe our job in that scenario? Because we recently had one.
I mean, we're definitely advocates for the owner. Like there's clearly no question around, hey, whose side of the table are we going to sit on? We're going to sit on that local business owner somewhere along Gulf Coast. We're there for them. We've already done some things like helping them get ready, and I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit in our next segment about how to prepare for these things. But when these knocks come and when they're lucrative enough to get their attention, we're on their side of the table. We're assisting them in evaluating the offers and just basically being a sounding board to help think through some of the elements. Oftentimes you'll see this carry-on provision where, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Business Owner, we'd like you to stick around 12, 18, 24 months post-sale. What's that transition look like? And ultimately, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to avoid situations that I've seen happen in a non-Gulf Coast state, I'll just say, somewhere north, well north of here.
Everything's north of here.
Where there was a business owner, is a fire sale situation.
Yes.
And it got to be a real mess because once using a saltwater analogy, once the sharks know there's blood in the water, well, guess what? The more lucrative deals go away, and you start seeing things that are like, gosh, am I going to have to sell for that multiple? Because that's not really what I was envisioning. I used to see 8X, and now I'm just going to hoping I get 5X.
Right.
That's tough.
Well, very good. All right. So moving on to our number 2 item on our list, Will, and again, this is something that we don't necessarily directly facilitate. It's a deferred sales trust. That would be the job of an attorney. However, just like Will was said, we're going to be very involved from the client's perspective. We're going to be sitting on their side of the table. So let's talk about number 2 on our list again, Will. That's deferred sales trust. Everything goes by initials in our industry, so DSTs. How does that tie? How do we segue from what we were just talking about with private equity, maybe coming in to buy a business owner out, and maybe that business owner, particularly along the Gulf Coast, is kind of maybe somewhat surprised that there's that many opportunities out there once you kind of tap into the market, that there are people looking to buy small to medium-sized businesses. And let's say that transaction goes through. How does the deferred sales trust help with that transition?
Well, I think it's important to start with, and again, if I get my CPA cap on here too tight, throw the timeout signal to me and I'll go back. But let's just think about the basics of this, where we've got a business owner. Sometimes we hear these stories. I got a loan from my uncle for $10,000, and I put this together, and I was leaving this one industry and parlaying my contacts into this launch of the new company. And next thing you know, hey, somebody's telling me it's worth $10 million. And when we start talking about, okay, so what's the capital gain on the $10 million? And oftentimes it could be close to 10 million because they don't have a lot of, if you will, investment or basis cost in the company. Like, what did they put in? Well, they put in blood, sweat, and tears, but it's hard to put you put a dollar amount on it. It sounds like it's 10 million, but they don't have much basis in the company or the assets that they have bought a long time, equipment, different things they use from cash flow from the business to continue to operate. All those things have been depreciated down. So the basis in those things is now close to zero, if not fully depreciated. So then we're talking about, hey, got 10 million to gain. And here's ultimately what's just like, man, you know what? I'd love to entertain these offers and move forward, but man, I'm going to get killed in capital gains tax. Federal rate's 24%. Most states you probably end up looking at somewhere between 5 and 6. Let's just say it's 30% of that number. In this case, on the $10 million transactions, $3 million goes to Uncle Sam right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate.
So now all of a sudden it's like, well, it's not really worth 10 because I'm only going to keep 7. So then the question turns to, what can we do? How can we be strategic in designing strategies to contend with that $3 million? Because again, $1 million handed off to Uncle Sam, $1 paid in taxes is $1 lost forever.
Right.
What a deferred sales trust does is it allows us an opportunity. Again, it's not an avoidance; it is a deferral of that cap gains tax, where we say, "Hey, that $10 million prior to sale, got a knock on the door. Let's say it's the XYZ private equity company. They say, hey, we love this business. We want to buy it from you. We're going to pay you $10 million. Hey, great. Thank you very much. Before I enter into that transaction, I'm going to sell my interest. I'm going to hand that stock and trade the stock of the company to a specialized trust. We call it a deferred sales trust. You get to name it whatever you want. There's some really creative names that clients have put on these things. But you're going to create your own deferred sales trust. You're going to sell it to the trust a couple weeks ahead of the sale to the XYZ private equity firm. And in turn, you're going to receive a note. You're going to receive a promissory note, typically 10 years in length. We can design it depending upon what the length is, but 10 is usually the common one. And in that, what we've done is we've basically been able to wave our hand up and say, hey, Uncle Sam, we're following the very long-held black and white tax codes, Internal Revenue Code, Section 453. And that installment sale method is what we're doing. We're saying, hey, I'm going to take a note, I'm going to hold it, and periodically that trust is going to pay interest to me on the note. And when I do have to make a principal payment, that's when I'm going to realize the capital gains tax. That's when I'm going to take constructive receipt of proceeds that relate to the sale. So let that digest for just a second there.
Well, and so what this is, Will, just to be the guy that's always got to do disclaimers, this is a very individual conversation, right? Because on the face of it, it sounds like, well, that's a no-brainer, right? I mean, in your scenario, that's $3 million that I'm not going to lose. Now, on the flip side of that, there's going to be somewhat loss of control, right? There's always a trade-off, right? For every
Sure. The trade-off is now I have $10 million in a trust for which I have a relationship with a trustee. Where I'm saying, hey, I have this idea about what I want to do next with the money. I need to replace. First of all, I need to replace that paycheck I was previously getting from the company. The paycheck's gone. If you don't work for the company anymore, paycheck's gone. Let's replace the paycheck. Okay, great. What do we need to do to come up with on a monthly basis to do that? The real key to this is what can I do over the course of the next 10 years with $3 million?
Right.
If this is a real estate developer or this is somebody who has the ability to go out there and have ideas and say, hey, I get normally 15% return on investment. Right. I get 15%. That means $450,000. 15% of $3 million is what's becoming available each and every year. With that bogey in mind, and gosh, that's an extra $4.5 million
right
on the original $3 million. So that's $7.5 million of value derived. So we're taking that dollar that would otherwise be lost forever to taxes, and we're utilizing it in a way that helps the ultimate beneficiary, which would be the original business owner. So if there was a, I wouldn't say loss of control. I'd say if I had someone, and it happens from time to time, hey, I need more of that money right away than I need to, 6% a year is not going to do it for me. That's where you got to start some real conversations where, hey, if you need these larger chunks, okay, we may have to realize some capital gains tax as we go along. If somebody pivoted, we'll see it. So typically where deferred sales trusts operate, business owner interest, commercial real estate, and in some cases, residential real estate. More often than not, we see with commercial real estate, I'll allude to a couple situations I had where we had some business owners in a medical services business, dermatology specifically, and they'd got to a point where the offers were just kind of like, man, I paid $800,000 for this building. They want to give me $6 million.
Right.
and I've depreciated it all the way down to zero. So I got a full $6 million gain to deal with. But man, I'm going to get killed in taxes, and I'm really reluctant to, part ways with $1.8 million. Well, okay, if we use a deferred sales trust and we work through this, first of all, they didn't have the money to do all the upgrades to the property that needed to be done in order to get it to, people say they're tired of toilets, tenants, and trash. So sort of the commercial real estate. From the residential perspective, most of us are used to, hey, as you go forward in life, you go buy a bigger and bigger house, a more expensive house. You effectively 1031 or take the gain from a previous house and roll it into the next one. Call that a quasi 1031. So that's kind of a unique thing, but we'll have some situations where all of a sudden somebody happens to be in a particular spot where, hey, my bogey point really is about $1.5 million to $2 million of gain where this can make sense, because there are some upfront costs that have to be incurred. If I've got a gain large enough, it's worth considering using the DST.
Very good. All right. So we'll quickly, we're going to pivot to number 3 on our list. Now this one, I'm going to frame it this way. So if you business owners are listening and you're saying, man, I don't know about private equity. That word scares me a little bit. I don't know about deferred sales trust because I may just be rolling right into another business, or more likely than not, in a scenario where Will and I serve quite a bit of functions for just general succession planning and exit strategies for business owners, Will. So let's talk quickly about, let's use mother or father own a business. Maybe kids are involved, or maybe they've got a key employee that they know the business going to be in good hands. For those that are not looking to just sell outright and looking to maybe kind of continue on in that business, talk just a little bit quickly about some of the succession planning that we do for those business owners.
Well, if it's going to be retained in the family, so it's a internal sale, if you will, where mom and dad want to convey the interest down to one of their children, then it's coming, and they have other children involved. It's probably easier if it was like, hey, they've got the only child that's in the business. Sometimes, let's say I've got a family of four kids in the family, and one happens to be in the business and the other 3 aren't.
Right.
And the parents say, hey, sometimes it's challenging in life for things to be equal, but we do want to try to be fair. And so what we go through is a process of identifying what about the other family assets are available. And probably the biggest thing is, in general, the thing that drives family wealth for closely held business owners is the business. So if you were to put things down on paper and try to quantify it, that'd be one of the steps involved, is to come up with a valuation of the business, different various ways we do that, techniques. And then we say, okay, the business is worth, let's go back, $10 million, and the family happens to have 10 more million in assets that they have. Our intent would be a long time to come up with ways and strategies of pushing money from the company back into the family, going from the corporate to the personal. It's an important thing we talk about, going from the corporate balance sheet to the personal balance sheet. But even if it gets to a stage of time where I've got some situations where, hey, again, business owners kind of at a certain say, hey man, I want to enjoy life. I want to do some traveling. I want to get out and about. I want to go to my go-go years in retirement before I get to slow go, before I get to no-go. They want to do the go-go. We need to structure some things ahead of time and have a buy-sell agreement in place for that particular child designated. Maybe it's a daughter that's going to take over, and she's going to have a buy-sell agreement with her siblings for the company stock, and the parents are going to call it levelizing the estate to make sure the 3 that aren't in the business are going to have a levelizing of fairness to that approach. Those are ways in which we try to help in an internal sale with the business owners.
Very good. Well, listeners, we're going to continue our discussion around these topics in our next segment. But if you heard something that caught your attention, feel free to reach out to us. We're very easy to get a hold of. You can set up an appointment by calling 251-327-2124, or you can reach us through our website. That's gulfcoastfa.com. Gulf like the Gulf of Mexico, Coast is in the show title, FA is in financialadvisor.com. Now on our site, you can choose to send a direct message to us, or you can click on the blue button in the upper right-hand corner, and that will put a 15-minute introductory phone call on my calendar. Of course, you can do all 3. So, all right, folks, coming up next, there's always a lot going on in the world, particularly the world of finance, investments, and money. Every week, we scour the interwebs for helpful financial articles related to our topic of the day, especially articles that pertain to those of you in or near retirement. So join us after the break to hear Will and I discuss this week's relevant headlines in our News of the Week segment. Stay tuned.
A multidimensional financial services company, Providence Partners serves the needs of independent insurance, financial, and employee benefit professionals. The team at Providence Partners serves other business professionals like property and casualty agencies, registered investment advisors, community banks, and benefit brokers to assist in their clients' risk management planning. Whether an individual or business owner client, this planning includes income replacement protection, planning for extended healthcare costs, family needs, and generational transfers of wealth. At Providence Partners, we give you access to industry specialists. Those specialists focus on business succession, business owner planning, family and household protection, estate planning, planning for that income loss, or planning for long-term care solutions. Providence Partners is an Alabama-based company. We have offices in Birmingham and along the Gulf Coast. Our website is providencepartners.org, and you can reach us any of the working days.
Welcome back to Coasting in Retirement. Your host, Josh Knoll here. So as we discussed before the break, every week we scour the interwebs for helpful financial articles related to our topic of the day, especially articles that pertain to those of you in or near retirement. Our job, at least we think it is to help you all understand how these headlines impact you, especially when it comes to your money. Now, quick note, if you want to read our referenced articles for yourself, we always include the links on our show transcript, which you can find on the website, gulfcoastfa.com. Look under the podcast tab and then look for Coasting in Retirement. We upload our episodes every Monday after the show airs on Sunday. Now, Michelle usually reads the headlines, so I'm going to take her place this week. And I always say, without further ado, here's Michelle with the news of the week. First up, Will, a recent article from M&A Magazine, which is short for Mergers and Acquisitions. It's titled, PE firms or private equity firms are betting big on small businesses. Now, this article contains quite a bit of surprising statistics around private equity firms' involvement in what the article refers to as middle market. They also refer to pre-middle market, and they even refer to micro market. And they didn't give dollar values, but I'm going to take a stab. That's probably the $5 to $20 million valuation range. One statistic I found surprising is that this article states that there are about 33 million small businesses in the United States, which that tracks. But it goes on to claim that an estimated 62% of these small businesses have some form of private equity investment, which I wouldn't have guessed that. So, Will, here's a question for you on this article. What's your opinion, or maybe even your experience, with private equity's increasing interest in small businesses? I mean, do you think it's as high as 62%? And if it is, why is that? What's going on?
You know, Josh, when I saw that stat there, it would be interesting to me to dig a little deeper. So, okay, folks, what is the definition, to the author, what is your definition of private equity? Because that might mean, hey, I got 10 grand from my uncle. There was a loan here. There was some, call it family related, call it close confidant, somebody that wasn't the individual, that it wasn't a loan. It wasn't a loan from a bank, a financial institution. It was private. It was a private deal. I could see, I would buy into that. I'd buy into 62% if you broaden the definition to go beyond, hey, this is a formal private equity firm that's done a capital infusion, to, we're going to use the definition where it includes anybody that's, hey, I think it's a great idea, kid. Here's $2,500. Good luck to you.
Right. Well, and on that, Will, so let's define this. Private equity, usually when somebody says private equity, they think of guys in three-piece suits sitting on Wall Street, sitting around a conference table, hammering out deals, throwing money around like it, throwing, hey, yeah, put $1 million there, put $1 million there, right? That's kind of what
KKR, Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts. KKR were the corporate raiders of the late 80s, early 90s.
That's what it feels like, right?
Right.
But private the reality of it is, I mean, if you boil the title down to exactly what it says, it's private. It means, like Will just said, it's coming from an individual, and it's equity, which in this terminology usually is cold, hard cash, but can be other things around equity, right? So I think that disclaiming that on that 62% is interesting. On the flip side of this, on this article, Will, they kind of reinforce what we said in the original segment, in that more and more private equity firms are turning their attention to this middle market, pre-middle market, micro market, however you want to call it. They're turning their attention, and they're coming in for, businesses that, honestly, you probably have dealt with on somewhat of a daily basis in the Gulf Coast. You would be surprised at some of the conversations around someone that's not even from here in a private equity setting coming in and possibly buying those businesses. Why do you think that? Because to me, Will, that's a relatively new phenomenon, right? Usually when you think private equity, you think large acquisitions. Why do you think there's this renewed interest in small business America by those firms?
So if we go back to a premise that folks have had their, the appetite has been satiated where it concerns the public equities markets. Like, well, I've bought the individual stocks, I've bought the mutual funds, I know about the things called ETFs now. So those are all things that are daily priced that I can get my hands on at any given point in time. There seems to be a proliferation of brokers, whether it's the wirehouses, traditional wirehouses, your Merrill Lynch, your Morgan Stanley, Smith Barney, or you go downstream and you got retail, and you're talking about, hey, Edward Jones, those types of groups, not independent like Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, nor Prime Capital. But those that have that particular initiative, people have they've had their fill, and now all of a sudden it's like, hey, the next frontier is I'd like to have something where I don't need it to be priced every day, but I'm looking over a 5, 10 year period of time where I'm really looking for some growth, double-digit growth. While I'm not good at evaluating whether or not a company is worth buying, I do know people who are. That's what the private equity firms represent, is the ability for investors to diversify their holdings. So if we're talking to somebody with $10 million, like, hey, it might be appropriate to take 10% of that, $1 million, and to have some private equity exposure in your overall portfolio, because, hey, that's a component that if the numbers play out, hey, you might get a 20-25% average annual return on that money. So that's why you see the money there. That's why the private equity firms are flush with cash. Now they're in turn looking for, and again, the primary premise was, hey, we're going to diversify the people that gave this money. We're going to help provide somebody a portfolio holding that they wouldn't normally have. And then what you find is, hey, for those areas, and a lot of it's geographically driven, is if we're talking Gulf Coast, we're talking Baldwin County, well, guess what? There's a lot of things going on in Baldwin County that are attractive, that are making money, that have great potential, and they're already realizing the potential. They have a high ceiling. There's continued growth that's available. And that's why you're seeing the knocks on the doors that are coming to people on the Gulf Coast.
Very good. That's exactly where I was hoping you was going with that. All right, so let's find our next article, Will. It's from Business News Daily, and it's titled 5 Crucial Steps to Sell Your Business. Now, this article kicks off by, it stresses the importance of accurate financials. You with your CPA hat screwed on tight would agree with that, right?
Correct.
Yeah, accurate financials for your business, and also how important it is to get an accurate estimate of your business's worth. That can be a fairly surprising, I don't want to say contentious, Will, but a lot of times a business owner has in his head what he thinks a business worth, but it's never been tested in the real market. So here's what I'm going to say. Will, you and I have worked with business owners looking to sell or have successfully sold their business, right? So let's discuss 2 things around that. On these crucial steps, are there anything you would add to this article? What are your thoughts on the crucial steps that they had? And then number 2, what is our role as financial advisors, and of course, as a tax planning consultant to Gulf Coast Financial Advisors? What's our role in helping our clients that want to sell their business?
Well, the article starts off, it's first of all having clear, concise financials and the track record for them. It's a little bit, sometimes we talk, we have business owners using action, I really need to clean up my act. They'll get the information of their CPA or they have, and now they're waiting on the CPA. Hey, I always tell people there's 2 different numbers. There's the value that you would sell for. Somebody came walking through the door and said, hey, I'm the guy that was knocking here, and I'm now brought the checkbook, and I'm ready to write you a check for this thing. Well, that's a lot bigger number than, for tax purposes, what we would tell Uncle Sam a business is worth. We're like, hey, it's been kind of a struggle of late. Not really sure if this thing's going to still be around in a couple of years. I mean, that 2 different numbers, 2 ends of the spectrum. One's big and one's small. With that, though, as we're talking about entertaining private equity offers, would be to have the ability to produce financial statements in given years that precede that current. So if we're going back, I'd say at least 3 years, preferably 5. The more, the better. If you have clear, concise financials and you can demonstrate growth trends, you can demonstrate, hey, where's the revenue come from? And ultimately, really, with the private equity, the article didn't speak to this, what the private equity firms are looking for is they're going to use something called a measure of quality of earnings. What they really want to know is, hey, listen, when it comes down to it, we see you've got good revenue, or your revenue projects out to be X. Okay, what comprises that revenue, and how do you turn it? What's it turn into for profit? And that quality of earnings statement is really what's going to be the basis for the offer that will be coming from the private equity firm. So that probably and it all starts with, again, kind of phrase of garbage in, garbage out. If you have solid financials and you can walk back through those things, is it help to have an audited financial statement? Yes. Is it absolutely necessary? Probably not. A review would probably do. But the ability to produce that and have the systems in place to be able to answer some of the questions that are going to come from that assessment of the quality of earnings.
Perfect. Very well said. All right, let's head on to number 3. Now, we touched on this in our opening. Will, we discussed deferred sales trust, or again, DSTs for short. And, again, me, Mr. Compliance here, I want to make it perfectly clear that neither Will or I set up DSTs. Again, that's a job for an attorney, nor are we blindly recommending DSTs for every single business owner out there looking to sell their business. It's a very specific use case, and it involves a lot of conversation. But even with all that said, I thought it would be good to give our listeners a direct link to the horse's mouth of DSTs. So for our next headline, we're going to pivot to the estate planning team. That's their name, estate planning team. They are tied directly to the origination of the DST concept. And specifically with the estate planning team, they have a page that's simply titled Deferred Sales Trust. So on this part, Will, to be fair to you, you have quite a bit more experience with DSTs than I do. And even with the estate planning team, correct? You've dealt with them?
Correct.
Right. So please guide our listeners on what they can find on this site and how they can learn a bit more about DSTs, because you want to be armed with information if you are looking at this.
I think it's a valuable resource to go to say, hey, I need a primer on the subject. I'd like to get a little bit more of the details. Who does this apply to? The basic concept. We've constructed a diagram, a couple different diagrams that people can see that kind of walk through the mechanics of how that works, the mechanics of what do you have to do in preparation for, what does it take to get it launched, and then once it's launched, how is it, the evaluation on the backside of ongoing, right? Like, hey, am I never going to hear from anybody for the next 10 years because I took this, it's an installment sale, and I took this note, so now I'm holding a note, and what happens next? And so that this is a good primer for people to be able to take a look at and dig into. But again, as you've noted on the front end, this is on a case-by-case basis. If this, for whatever reason, and we're perfectly fine for figuring out, hey, this is not going to apply to you, we're happy to have those conversations to, if you will, process of elimination, determine that this isn't something that's going to fit your particular situation. We'd welcome that chance to interact with you to do a think through.
Well, and as I've said many times on the show, our job is not to slap hands, right? But you just mentioned something about process of elimination. I learned this from you, and it's not an uncommon saying, but describe our role in not being a hammer in search of a nail on a sales process before I move to the next headline, because I think it really applies to the DST concept.
No, again, I would say if I was to walk through and talk to 10 different business owners, there's going to be, by process of elimination, there's going to be some factors, certain factors. Hey, I need more of that money than, for whatever reason, personal circumstances. Hey, I need more of that money now currently, so I'm going to go ahead and bite the bullet and pay the tax, versus, hey, I don't think I'll ever need the money. I'm perfectly high and dry. This is really money I'm thinking about passing along as a legacy to my kids. We want to make sure that we tailor that strategy as a solution to the particular set of circumstances that's presented to us. And again, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help the business owner. Again, it's so important to me. You see it in their eyes when they talk about their business. This is the culmination of years and years of blood, sweat, and tears they put into it. They remember handing out paychecks when they knew full well at the end they were the last paycheck, and the one that they were getting didn't amount to much, if anything. And they understood, hey, wow, what does that look like? And now all of a sudden they're having these conversations. They want to maximize the value, and whatever we can do to help them to do that fits them. Again, rather than, hey, the only thing we got to swing is a hammer and it comes in the form of a DST, then that's just not going to be the case for us.
Very good. All right. So, Will, last article for this week. I'm going to preface it this way. One of the great things about hosting your own show is that I get to decide what websites and news publications get referenced. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to be a little self-serving with this next news source, and I'm going to go straight to our very own Gulf Coast Financial Advisors website. But I think I have a good reason to do so. The particular page I'm referencing on my site is called the Business Owner Center, and I believe it contains just a ton of great information around business owner planning. On this page, listeners, you'll find resources directly tied to our topic of the day with exit and succession planning. You'll even have a little bit more nitty-gritty detail on things like buy-sell agreement funding. But Will, I wanted to bring up one page in particular because it's definitely jam-packed with useful information. And I know that it doesn't necessarily directly tie into a business owner being at that very tipping point of selling his business, but I think it ties into some of the prep work that may happen before we reach that point, right? I'm referring to our cash balance page, and I bring it up because I feel it's a concept that we've helped many mature business owners implement as they've worked on moving, you said it earlier, moving assets from the business balance sheet to their personal balance sheet. And in doing so, within the rules of the IRS, keeping more of their hard-earned dollars in their pocket, right? On this cash balance page, there's even a downloadable cash balance presentation. So Will, you're the person that introduced me to cash balance plans, so full credit there. Can you give us a very quick synopsis of what a cash balance plan is and how it works?
No, Josh, this would be in the vicinity of or fall into that category of, hey, listen, I've grown the business. It's a mature business. I earn in excess, the income that the business owner is taking out of the business is $500,000 or more. Important caveat that the business owner has a lifestyle spending is, say, modest in comparison to that. They're not spending the entire $500,000, but maybe they're able to make do on $20,000 a month. And then what they end up with is income that's taxable to them in any given year, and they're finding themselves in that soon-to-be, it's going to go from 37% rate up to 39.6 here shortly, plus the state, the income tax that they're paying on that incremental extra income really kind of, they just say, hey, every dollar I'm making, I'm giving up 42 cents. What a cash balance plan presents is an opportunity for a business owner to take some of that taxable income and to push it away for themselves, to defer it in that year and to begin to park it over there on the personal balance sheet so that that's sort of the retirement funds that they're going to have, and allows for them to have a current year tax deduction and to push off those as retirement savings that they'll use in future years, which oftentimes, again, they'll find themselves likely in a lower tax bracket. And so when they take that money out, they're paying less tax.
Very good. All right. Well, Will, great job discussing the headlines. I think these are all great resources for you mature business owners out there tuning in today. Now, listeners, if you have questions around the topics in our headlines of the week, or maybe just questions related to your investment strategy, your financial planning strategy, even around tax planning, then why don't you give us a call, 251-327-2124. We can have a conversation, or if you want to set up an appointment, you can reach out to us on our website at gulfcoastfa.com. All right, folks, coming up next, Josh's crystal ball and big mouth. What have been some of my predictions? Have I been right? Was I ever wrong? How wrong? I don't have Michelle here to pick on me, so Will and I will have to pick on each other. What do we think is going to affect investors in the near future, maybe even the distant future? We're going to talk about all these things, plus poke a little fun at my big mouth, and maybe we'll even get to pick on Will a little bit. Stay tuned. Whether it's building a business from scratch with your own two hands and wanting to maximize the financial impact of those sacrifices, or growing a great nest egg by being a dedicated and reliable worker for years, or choosing to live a life well within your means in order to accomplish a lifelong dream of retirement, the last thing you want is to go with the wrong financial advice after you've worked so hard to accumulate your assets. You've also probably spent most of your life putting others' needs ahead of your own, and now it's your turn. We can help. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is a locally owned, independent, fee-based financial planning, investment management, and tax planning practice. We have offices in Fairhope and Orange Beach. We serve all of Baldwin County and the Gulf Coast. We also have an easy-to-understand fee-for-service model with no sales quotas, no proprietary products. Our ultimate responsibility is to our clients' goals and dreams. You can reach us at 251-327-2124 or find us online at gulfcoastfa.com. That's GULF, like the Gulf of Mexico, Coast, FA as in financialadvisor.com. Welcome back. Your host, Josh Knoll here, alongside guest co-host Will Steih. So, Will, I'm opinionated. You are too. We have strong opinions at times. And I would say a radio show host that isn't opinionated probably wouldn't be very interesting to listen to. And I am, and we both are, paid in our professions to offer professional guidance and opinions to our clients. Otherwise, what use would we be? So Sometimes I feel so strongly about something that I talk about it publicly. Sometimes I'll even make predictions. And while I'm usually proved right, because I tend to be fairly skeptical about my own industry, there are times that I swing and miss. So if you want to hear me eat a little crow, let's get at it with Joshua's crystal ball and big mouth. Sorry. So Will, I'm going to start off. This is going to be fun. I'm really curious. We didn't get a chance to rehearse this one. So Will, regular listeners will know that I often pick on meme stocks like GameStop, and I pick on crypto. And I think for good reason, because let's just take crypto for an example. Crypto is a zero-sum game. There is no basic underlying value to the asset other than, in the case of like Bitcoin, artificial scarcity, right? There's no underlying true fundamentals. And I know Crypto Bro is going to say, hey, all these projects we have going on, it's the future of Web3. I say that's fine, but show me something that is really tangible in the 15 years that the unknown founder of Bitcoin created. We really don't have anything else, nothing to point to yet. Us in the industry, we refer to as a greater fool of investing. It's a fine investment as long as you can find a greater fool than you to pay greater than you paid. And then with meme stocks, particularly around, we've done some discussion around GameStop, where all it took was this one guy named Roaring Kitty to really lean into this stock and to push a company called GameStop, which probably, to be fair, was a little undervalued at the time he started working with it. But he pushed it into billions and billions of dollars of market cap, right? Way, way beyond anything fundamental would ever justify. So I'm curious, I'm sure listeners are too, what's been your experience, particularly around your clients that are close to near retirement or in retirement, and they maybe they got a buddy that's really done well on crypto or done well on GameStop or Rivian or anything else that was a meme stock. What do you tell them? What's your opinion on these things?
Well, Josh, just as you were describing that, it was taking me back to, it's summertime, it's baseball season. It's taking me back to being in the city of Atlanta at a place called the Atlanta Sports Card Shop. And I learned a lesson in value one day when I was so gung-ho about buying the entirety of the 1975, I'm going to date myself, 1975 Topps set of cards. Fred Lynn and Jim Rice and all these, notable rookie cards were in there. And I'm like, man, for $180, you can buy this entire set of cards. There might have been 682 cards in that thing, right? So, but the value was in certain cards that were within that entire set. And I thought, man, $180, I'm going to buy this because it's going to go up in value. Watch what happens. And I never forget my dad coming with me, and we walked in and having a discussion. My dad kind of took his head. He said, okay, he said, let's just say that, say it out here, my nickname, Butch. We'll say Butch here is going to buy this. We're going to walk out that door and come walking back in. He's going to have that same box of cards under his arm. He's going to say, hey, mister, I'm going to sell this to you. He just bought it from you for $180. What would you give him for it? The guy just kind of sat there for a second. He cocked his head to the side and he said, I don't know, about $90. And I literally, my jaw hit the floor because I'm like, whoa, I just bought it for $180.
Wait a minute.
Why are you now only going to give me $90? And the lesson there was supply and demand.
Yep.
The fact of the matter is there may be some demand for, and the supply may appear limited. And what I pay for it, though, really is only going to hold value if I have a willing buyer on the backside of that transaction at some point. And again, I have to be willingness to hold something. But in the case of these meme stocks and crypto, it's really kind of I hate to say the word crapshoot, but it feels like it. It's like, hey, how long are you willing to hold this? Now, if you got 10 grand laying around that you got nothing better to do with, you're like, hey, I'm willing to never see this be worth anything. I'll put 10 grand into it. That would be my caveat I would have for somebody. Now, again, I'm not conversant enough to tell you to give you an evaluation of which one. I would step aside from that conversation to say, but whatever money you put into this, just realize, hey, you may never see a dime of it.
Right.
And at least to the extent that if you put in 10 grand, you can only lose 10 grand.
That's fair. Right.
Right. It's not open-ended where you got to pay property taxes and insurance and other things to try to keep funding it for some period of time. At least then you've in effect defined your potential for loss.
Yeah, I like it. Well, and Will, to be fair, especially with my clients that are in or near retirement, these are things, if it looks and smells and tastes and sounds little cultish, then it is a little cultish, right? And some of the definition around cultish is there's going to be all these buzzwords and all these little hyper definitions on everything, and it's going to be us versus the world. And, Crypto Bro's telling me he's worried about the underbanked in Africa. I've never heard anybody in their 20s in America other than before Bitcoin came around, worry about the underbanked in Africa, right? I mean, they didn't even know they existed, but it's just creating this use case that we haven't seen yet. So that's our opinion. All right, folks. Well, I hope you enjoyed a peek behind the curtain on how Will and I form our opinions and predictions, and more importantly, that we're willing to admit when we're wrong, which we are not wrong on meme stock and crypto, no matter what happens here or this year. So listeners, if you've liked what you've heard today, or maybe you just want to have a conversation, we invite you to reach out to us. Again, you can call us anytime, 251-327-2124. As Will knows, I answer that phone. It's really fun when we get radio show folks come in. We had one this week. Fantastic guy. If he's listening, appreciate you coming in. You can call us, make an appointment. You can shoot us a message on our website, gulfcoastfa.com. Or remember, you can always put a 15-minute conversation on my calendar. Just click the blue link in the upper right-hand corner. All right, folks, that is a wrap for this week on Coasting in Retirement. I want to give a huge thank you to my guest co-host, my good friend, longtime companion, work companion. We're doing this stuff, Mr. Will Steih. Thank you to our awesome radio station, FM Talk 106.5. A thank you to our awesome show producer, Mr. Chazare Gray. Many thanks to the provider of our show music. That's a local band, Sloth Racer. And as always, my sincere appreciation for all of you out there that have been listening and joining us on this journey. We'd obviously love to be a part of your financial journey as well. Till we talk again next Sunday, have a wonderful and productive week. This has been Coasting in Retirement with Josh Knoll. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, LLC, known as GCFA, is a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Alabama and in such other jurisdictions where it is registered, filed the required notices, or is otherwise excluded or exempted from such registration and/or notice filing requirements. Registration does not indicate or imply that GCFA has attained a particular level of skill or ability, nor does it constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, or any other state securities regulator. The Coasting in Retirement radio program serves mainly to disseminate general information, including those pertaining to GCFA's advisory services, together with access to additional investment-related information, publications, materials, and links. The publication of this radio show should not be construed by any client and/or prospective client as GCFA's solicitation to effect or attempt to effect transactions in securities, nor should be interpreted as GCFA providing personalized investment advice or any type of professional advice for compensation wherever this program is broadcast. Any subsequent direct communication by GCFA with a prospective client will be conducted by a representative that is either registered or qualifies for an exemption or exclusion from registration in the state where the prospective client resides. Certain information, news stories, headlines, data, charts, graphs, figures, or statistics presented on this radio program may have been obtained from third-party sources that are believed to be generally reliable, but which GCFA may not have independently verified. GCFA does not and cannot guarantee the timeliness, accuracy, or reliability of any such third-party information and undertakes no obligation to update or correct any information that may become obsolete, unreliable, or inaccurate. This radio program also contains the opinions, views, and perspectives expressed by Josh Knoll and any other GCFA representative, which are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, views, or perspectives of GCFA as a firm. Such personal views and opinions should not be construed as endorsements or professional advice from GCFA. GCFA makes no representation or warranty regarding the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any information on this radio program and disclaims any liability for any direct or indirect loss or damage incurred from using or relying on such information. GCFA and Providence Partners are not affiliated, nor are any of their respective representatives.
A multidimensional financial services company, Providence Partners serves the needs of independent insurance, financial, and employee benefit professionals. The team at Providence Partners serves other business professionals like property and casualty agencies, registered investment advisors, community banks, and benefit brokers to assist in their clients' risk management planning. Whether an individual or business owner client, this planning includes income replacement protection, planning for extended healthcare costs, family needs, and generational transfers of wealth. At Providence Partners, we give you access to industry specialists, Those specialists focus on business succession, business owner planning, family and household protection, estate planning, planning for that income loss, or planning for long-term care solutions. Providence Partners is an Alabama-based company. We have offices in Birmingham and along the Gulf Coast. Our website is providencepartners.org, and you can reach us any of the working days.